we go. Believe we are live. Thank goodness. Let me see here. Alright. Cool. Cool, I believe we are live. Messed around this weekend with a lot of settings on my stream capture stuff, so hopefully everything is great to go here. I suppose we'll find out. Not much to do but try it, right? Hopefully everyone had a good weekend. I know mine was pretty chill in general. Got some good workouts in. Somehow managed to survive a lot of cold weather. Even got some snowy weather for us. Winter gave us a little sneak peek of what we should expect for the rest of the winter, I think. So we'll see how all of that continues to play out. But yeah, it's a good weekend. Good weekend, but I'm here and ready to do some streaming again. I look forward to streaming every weekend. Like it's I mean getting to log on here and have sort of the chance to just sit down and relax and work on some writing, work on some gaming, all that kind of stuff. I look forward to it. And it's probably one of my favorite parts about, especially Mondays, but generally my weekdays in general. So it's a nice way to break up the monotony of my days that would otherwise mostly be me working and sitting around waiting for something else to do. It's a nice thing that I can do sitting here at home. Fun thing to do sitting here at home since I work from home these days. So I can just kind of chill out, work on this little project of streaming, while being ready for anything that would require me to do my other job. Because there tends to be a hurry up and wait aspect to what I do when I'm not actively doing inspections, which I work out and have specific days that I get all that done, which is why I don't stream on Wednesdays and everything. In between getting all that stuff done, there's a lot of like waiting around, and so times like last week I get a lot of calls that I have quite a bit of stuff that I have to take care of, and it gets in the way of like when I streamed on Friday. But in general, when that's not happening, I tend to kind of just be chilling out. So it's nice to have this as something to do that feels kind of productive and fun and enjoyable with that time. And it's one of the blessings of being able to work from home is that I can do this. So I am very grateful about the fact that I can do this kind of stuff. I decided to switch over to the warm beverages at this point in time. I keep wondering why I'm cold all the time. I'm like, well, it would probably help if I actually drank like warm beverages rather than always just drinking like room temperature or colder things to drink. It's like, oh, that would probably make just a little bit of a difference, a little bit. But sometimes it takes me a few tries to figure these things out. I'm a simple, straightforward man. Ah, boy. I'm just kind of looking back, trying to refresh my memory about where we left off last time, so that way once we give it a couple more minutes in case anyone else is going to trickle on in here. But for the moment, just giving it a couple more minutes, and so I'll refresh and review. But we're getting pretty close to being a good time to go ahead and get going on stuff. But I like giving people a chance to trickle in. I know there's some people that like to try and get in at the beginning, so it gives me a chance to sort of get my bearings and remember what the heck I'm supposed to be doing here for streaming and all that kind of stuff. There's always a bit of that, like, hold on, where am I? What am I doing? That you gotta like work your way through. I've found in my incredibly unexperienced experience, my incredible lack of experience, what I've experienced is. But okay, it's been about 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and get us going here. Just making sure that. Okay, I think everything I need is good to go, and we're on the right tabs and everything. So let me swap us over here. Here we go. So last time we've been working on our sort of, we're calling it the Lost Tunnels, right? And this is sort of our, it's a dungeon leading up to a Durgar city that our players are trying to get to at this stage in the campaign, is sort of what we're working on. But the baseline here is that players are not going to be explicitly aware of the fact that this is a Durgar city, at least not yet. They are expecting to encounter an abandoned dwarven city that has, since becoming abandoned, has been taken over by Durgar. And so I've been thinking about it a lot and trying to imagine how I want to go about building this dungeon, and I kind of just keep settling on the idea of planting small clues for the players about the nature of this dungeon, so that they can sort of try and puzzle together exactly what's going on before really getting into the thick of it. That's especially important in the first part of the dungeon, right, when they're going through that first sort of segment of it, and they find themselves sort of exploring this place that is far from abandoned. Mostly it's just monstrosities and stuff that they're facing, but then it all eventually culminates in them having to fight some different potential Durgar stuff. But in this first section, it's really a good chance to drop a lot of really subtle hints, just to kind of give the players some fun and trying to see if they recognize it, because there's no real way for the characters, like there's no automatic roles that I'm going to be putting, no sort of automatic, okay, your character has figured this out type of stuff. There's just a lot of clues that they can kind of utilize their meta to be like, oh, I think I know what this is, and then they can check to see if their character understands it. But it's all largely inconsequential, at least for the early part. So it's just kind of a fun way to add a bit of challenge and puzzle solving to the game for the players themselves, rather than always having everything be through the lens of their characters. It can be a fun way to add a bit of reward to the players for being clever, which a lot of them, I find anyway, a lot of players really appreciate that. So that's kind of what we're working on, and we finished our first set of rooms here already. So we are on to the second set of rooms here. I need to rearrange my little tabs down here so that way I can find what I'm looking for. So this is our first area. Now this dungeon, remember us talking about it last time a little bit. This dungeon really is, the way I'm designing it, it's definitely going to be a slog for players to get through. It is a lot of very repetitive looking rooms with a lot of very repetitive looking ways to navigate through them. I mean, this is our first section, right? But then as we go through all the other sections, you can see the rooms are organized the same way all throughout. It's a very monotonous dungeon, and normally that's something that I try to avoid, but for the sake of this dungeon, that's something that I really wanted to emphasize, because this part of this, so the leg of the campaign, right, is they're going to this dwarven city that's now overrun by Durgar. Well, the dwarves living inside the mountains would have wanted some sort of defensible position, right? That's kind of the point of being in the mountains in general, is that it's pretty defensible when there are only so many entrances into the mountain. And so to add to that, this part of the dungeon, this is like the final lead up into the city. And what it is it's meant to be just a network of confusing, hard to navigate tunnels. Tunnels that are easy for someone who's unfamiliar with them to get lost in, and easy for the dwarves themselves to set up a counter sort of attack, or whatever you want to say, depending on the situation, by forcing, you know, the players into the invaders into specific regions. That's easy for them to sort of navigate through and cut them off when you understand the area. So I want this to be a very monotonous, very maze-like, very labyrinth-like dungeon, because I want it to feel sort of oppressive. You know, that's the goal here. That's the goal. So it is monotonous, but this time it's a very intentional thing. Very, very intentional thing. Um, but without we don't, you know, no need to dwell on that a whole lot more. It's just something that I like to point out because again, it was brought up last time, and people were kind of wondering about that because typically, like I say, typically speaking, I would not want to make something quite that much of a drag or a slog to get through. But this time it's on purpose. It's on purpose. So making a labyrinth, yeah, to a certain degree. It's kind of, yeah, it's meant to be, like I say, sort of like a dungeon that would be easy for people to get lost in because it's sort of a defensive positioning that that the dwarves would have made in this region. So that's kind of what we're working on. We finished up here. We finished this first section, and now we're getting on to our second section here. So the first section would have seen players getting sort of the first of multiple keys that will get them access into here. And so now as they go through here, they'll find the second of those keys, which will then get them into the next section of this. So it's a very, again, it's kind of meant to be a very, maybe labyrinth is the wrong word. It's not necessarily set up in a way that would get people lost per se. It's more so a way to just sort of wear people down and compartmentalize the whole location, the whole situation. So yeah, so let's see here. So we need to, looking at what we have here, so we're going on to section 2 here. So we got to get some of our baseline foundational stuff. A gauntlet of rooms. That's a really good way to describe it. Yes, a gauntlet, a just a whole collection of stuff that they just have to trudge through. So let's see. So just to get some of our minutia taken care of, our baseline checks here, for anything that I have to sort of come up with on the fly, right? Easy checks will be set to an 11, difficult ones 14. Kind of arbitrary. It's just there to make sure that I don't randomly make up numbers that are more or less fair in retrospect after having selected them when players decide to kind of go off script, if you will. And so we've got that. So now our XP breakdown, we actually already did this up here. We broke down, we already kind of know what sort of experience points players should be encountering and earning in this segment of the dungeon. So we'll just go ahead and copy and paste that there. Oops. There we go, just like that. Let's see here. I want to say, hold on, how do I have that organized? So that's just difficult to look at. I don't like the way that's organized. I guess I have it that way. Alright, well, we'll just leave it difficult. Because I prefer things to be uniform above all else. So, there we are. There we are. Alright, so now we got to come up with some enemies here. And a lot of ways we can probably just sort of reuse what's up here. Because the enemies are always kind of meant to sort of build off of each other. But the generalized breakdown is always going with, so for our fodder, our easiest enemies, right, 10 of them would make up a medium combat, so all of them will be 6, so mathematically it'd be 60 XP, so we'll find like a 50 XP enemy. The soldiers, the next level up would be about 5 of them would make a medium difficult challenge, and then the leaders, sort of the next ones up there, be about 2 or 3 of them would make a medium, and then the boss is going to be just one of them alone would be a medium difficulty battle. So, do we show the players the entire map, or do you draw it out via exploration? So, I kind of do a mix of both. It starts off as them just kind of going through and trudging through it, one room at a time, and one room is revealed. And it's made really easy because right now, the group that I'm leading, we play online. And we use Foundry/Forge virtual tabletop, which does a lot of automatic fog of war, line of sight type of stuff, so it makes it really easy to do that. But even in person, I like to try and draw one room at a time. But one of the things that I include in most of my dungeons is the opportunity for them to discover a map. And so if they find the map, that will reveal the entire layout of the dungeon, so they can kind of plan their approaches and stuff like that. And then I'll also, it's a very Zelda-esque approach to the dungeons, right? Because then they can also get a compass, which is something that will give them at least some sort of idea, even if it doesn't say exactly what's there, some kind of idea about what is actually in each of the rooms. So those are things that players can find, but I don't just hand it to them. They have to kind of search through the rooms, do some exploring through the dungeon, you know, and in a certain degree kind of get lucky. Like, it's predetermined what room it's going to be in, but you know, how soon do they get to that room? Are they getting good enough rolls to find it? All that kind of stuff. So the opportunity is there, but as a baseline, I don't reveal rooms until they've at least been into the room, is what I'd like to do. And it sometimes drives players crazy, but that's kind of the point of it. So it works out well. It works out well. But let's see. Okay, so for our enemies, we can reuse some of these, like I say. So like our 50, we can use the gray oozes here. For our sort of fodder enemies, the reduced threat, threat gray ooze, which is our 50 XP enemy there. Do that one. Our 100 XP, I'm pretty sure we have one of those picked out already too, don't we? Yeah, we have the shadows there, which are such great enemies. I love shadows in a labyrinth like this. Because it like, I think the thing that I like about it is because eventually players will kind of reach that routine of like, okay, sneak through, try and peek and perceive and all that kind of stuff, and shadows, just the nature of them, very hard for them to detect, even with all that kind of stuff, or at least the way I play them, because it's just a shadow, right? And so it requires pretty high perception rolls to know whether or not they're there. So it can kind of still force that element of surprise and having enemies sneak up on them, even when the rooms are, you know, of this nature, where it's just a big box of a room without really anything in there to hide or disguise anything. So it's really good at making them not feel safe ever, which is what we're going for in this dungeon in particular. So we'll set that up. Got those monsters. Now for these guys, we need something that's around the 200 to 300 experience point thing, and we have not figured anything out there. So let's go ahead and head over here, and we'll just kind of look through some monsters and just try and figure out what we can find. You know, if it loads up. There we go. Let's see here. So we've been working with sort of more of our nasty things. So aberrations. No, not beasts. I was thinking monstrosities, but we're kind of sticking with our aberrations, monstrosities, and then oozes. Been primary, but we can also utilize some undead. I think that would totally fit in here, especially if we're talking about a place that's going to have a lot of Durgar in it. Let's see here. Challenge range. Well, we'll just sort it all by challenge range here. We can definitely work our way up a little bit through gray oozes are going to be worth the 100 experience points. We really need a challenge rating 1 here for our next type of monster that'll be in this portion anyway. 200 experience points. I think that'll probably do it for us, but let's just scooch up and check and remind myself. Yeah, 450, that's jumping up a little too much. That's more of our little mini boss that'll be in this section. So we're looking at our challenge rating 1, 200 experience point type of monsters here. Boneless would be creepy as hell. That would be a really fun one to throw at them. Really, really creepy. That would really mess with their heads. That'd be a really good one. I may go with that, honestly. Honestly, just looking at it. I mean, look at that thing. Huh. Golly, imagine that thing. Like, even if it's not animated, just seeing that lying on the ground. Oh. Gosh, that is some Cthulhu level crap right there. So that's a good option there. It fits the theme. Like, I'm really kind of trying to go for that really creepy horror movie type of atmosphere over anything in this one, because this is supposed to be, like I say, it's supposed to be It's supposed to be a section of underground tunnels through a mountain, through an area that has been left abandoned because of all kinds of magic that was causing all kinds of dark, twisted creatures to exist. So this is really, I really want this to feel just like oppressively unpleasant to be in, right? So it's like we could go with zombies, but even zombies almost feel a little too vanilla for the type of creep factor I'm looking for here. I don't want them to walk in and just see like zombies shambling around. They're like too animated, right? We're going with oozes, we've got the shadows, things that like when you first look at them it appears as though you're facing just a complete and utter boring room, really, is sort of what I'm looking for here. So that boneless. Nothing wrong with traditional monsters. I mean, yeah, traditional monsters are totally fine. 100%. I rely on them a lot. But like, let's see here, Terra Folk. Where are all of these? What's this thing? The ochre jelly. That one might not be a terrible option. We already have the ooze, though. We already have an ooze for this section, and I like to try and diversify a little bit more if I can. Spectre wouldn't be too bad either. Kind of fits the shadow mold to a degree. What do we have here? Sunlight sensitivity while in sunlight. Yeah, see, like this would be a perfect place for them to all be hiding. Life drain. It's the description and purpose that really puts the emergency. You're not wrong. The description is really there. And zombies, like we could utilize zombies and sort of add that in there by just like having them act like corpses that lie on the ground. There's no doubt about that. Could definitely do that, but I don't know. Like I say, zombies sort of have this. They have this stigma of being like normal already, and I really want this dungeon to be something that really feels just creepily abnormal, and I feel like animated skin just kind of fits that bill a little bit better for the type of atmosphere I'm looking for here. Life drain wouldn't be bad to do, but I don't know. I keep going back. Where is it? Boneless. I keep going back to this thing. Like, that is just so spot on for what I'm looking for here. I don't have it as... I haven't purchased it yet. I'll have to do that at some point in time. But just the appearance alone. Appearance alone is what I'm looking for here. So we're going to put that in there. And then we'll buy it later when I don't have to put my credit card information on screen. Thought you had me, you identity thieves out there. No, I like that. I like the look of the boneless ones. Because I'm just imagining, like, they walk into a room. They walk into a room and see what appears to just be a pile of leather, and it turns into just, like, this skin that starts assaulting them. Oh gosh, it's hard to beat that atmospheric creep out factor. Let's see here. Coming across a dead body with a corn purse spell. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage zombies. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that they don't have a place. I'm just the tunnels that they're going through are tunnels that have been just completely wrecked by dark, twisted magic. Something even beyond your standard animated corpse. Like, we're talking about weird, nasty monstrosity creatures, things that survive in these tunnels by being able to just be looked past so that they can sneak up on you. And a body is harder to overlook than just like what appears to be a pile of rags in the corner, is kind of what I'm going for. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That zombies can sort of add that creepy surprise factor, but the atmosphere I'm looking for is something like, I want the enemies to be something that could very easily be overlooked, and a corpse lying in the corner is hard to overlook when we're talking about rooms that are compact, square like this. They're just not going to get overlooked, right? And so it doesn't quite fit the bill of what I'm trying to do with this. because I want the rooms to, on the surface level, feel abandoned and feel empty and alone and cold. And like I say, even a body sitting there just doesn't quite do it. Just doesn't quite do it. Not quite what I'm looking for. So we're gonna stick with the boneless there. But we do need to come up with like a boss in this area. This guy's gonna have somewhere around 600 experience points. We might bump it up to the because challenge rating 2 will be 450 and 3 would be the 750. So we'll look at both of those and see what we're looking for, or see what we've got available here. So let's check here. Yeah, so those are our 450s. Let's do this, and let's see what we got available to us. I might actually dip into the Durgar as well and utilize one of them, because that's the end game here, is that they're gonna have to face some Durgar. But I don't want to give away the secret that the Durgar are in charge of the city, because these are the tunnels that are leading up to the city that they believe to be abandoned, right? No one is aware that the Durgar have been for some time building up their presence there. And so the longer we can wait before giving away that secret, the better, because these tunnels are leading into that city. And so if we can finish the tunnels with the big reveal of, oh hey, there are Durgar here, then all the better. But I'm not so adamant about it that I'll sacrifice a good, mini boss fight. It's your mummy. Those kind of fit the same mold as the zombies, which is not quite what I'm looking for here. Slithering tracker. Ooh, that would be kind of a good one. Ooh, that would be messed up. That'd be really messed up to do something like that. Not a bad idea. We'll come back to that one. Come back to that one. What else do we have here? Hook horrors. Those are a little too obvious for me. Oof. Thing's creepy. Ooh. No thank you. As in, like, seeing it in real life. In terms of using it as a monster, oh yes. Oh yes, I will find a way to use that one of these days. Choldrith? Yeah, more spider. If we wanted to go for the spider theme. So me personally, I dip into the spider well a lot when it comes to finding enemies. So the more I can avoid using spiders, the better. Players seem to embrace mini boss fights. Yes, they absolutely do. They absolutely do. They love those really iconic one-off enemies. So I like to try and include them where I can. And every dungeon will have like an actual boss as well. So you are 100% correct there, and that's something that I'm definitely a big firm believer in. I want to go back to that slithering. What's it called? Where was that thing? Was that in this next page over here? Yeah, the slithering tracker. I want to do that thing. Frickin', gosh, look at that. Look at that. I am liking that thing. Because sometimes leads one to undergo a ritual whereby they transform into a body of semi-liquid sentience, known as a slithering tracker, innocuous and insidious at the same time. Tracker flows into places where a normal creature can't go and brings its own brand of watery death upon its query. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Like, just something that seems like they're in a water drippy room, and suddenly it like forms into a creature. Oof. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. If I wanted to high health monsters, then have a dozen average. They would. They absolutely would. I almost never utilize a boss battle as just being one singular enemy, though. I almost never do that, and that's just because of action economy and the way it works. When you only have one enemy for a group to focus on, it will always seem, generally speaking, a lot easier than what people usually think of as a big epic boss fight. A big epic boss fight should feel drug out, long, complicated, scary, everyone should come out of it feeling pretty beat up, pretty tenderized. And when you do just a singular enemy, you're really going to have to crank that challenge rating up. Like, we're talking way higher than you would think. Because when you have 5 people wailing on one creature, even if it has multi-attack and can do a couple different things per turn, when everyone is wailing on one character, they will chip and whittle it down pretty quick. That has pretty invariably been my experience over the many years that I've been a DM. So I will always pick one really iconic thing and then have it have at least a handful of like minions or lackeys or whatever that will come in and distract the battlefield. They're not meant to be tough parts of the battle, but more so distractions, ways to add confusion, ways to balance that action economy so that not every single attack is going straight for the boss, and so that more than 1 or 2 people can get attacked in any given turn. So I always use that. But yeah, I'm feeling this guy. If we give them like this guy, and then also just a handful of oozes that follow with it, almost as if they were. You could like flavor text them too, where they just operate like those oozes that we did, but then just like flavor them to be sort of components of this guy that are sort of under its influence or something like that. Even though that's not rules as written per se, you just sort of like flavor text it that way, and then use the stat blocks as they are. That would really emphasize sort of the boss nature of this thing. And it would really make it feel different. So I think that's what I'm going to go for. That's here. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do one of my favorite things nowadays, that we can just do a quick screen capture that way. I love doing that. I love being able to do that. So let's see here. Slithering Tracker. That guy is worth 700 XP. Because yeah, we can do that with like 3 of those gray oozes, and that would bring in a pretty yeah, 700. Bring in like 3 or 4 of those, set it up as like a hard battle or something like that. That would be really good. That'd be a really good battle. I like that a lot. All right, so that's perfect. Our long rest. Okay, just because I'm lazy, I don't want to have to change that much stuff. So if players decide to take a long rest while they're in this section, we need to make sure we have ways to punish them for that. because that's what we do as DMs. We punish our players. I mean, within reason, but you know, that's kind of the name of the game there. All right, so we'll do that, but we're gonna change these up. These should be a bit more difficult. So we can do 6 shadows here for one of them. So just like an army of shadows descends upon them, and then we can actually do 3 of the boneless. I like that idea where it's just like suddenly it's like just like these skin monsters suddenly like wake some of them up by like creeping onto them or something. Oh God, can you imagine? God, I would die of a heart attack. They wouldn't even need to do anything to me. I would just die of a heart attack. That'd be it right there. It'd be game over for me. All right, we're gonna have to decide what goes in each room here. Let's just set up our. There's 10 rooms here. Hold on, I was at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. That's right. Players bring in. I like that. Players bring in their wit. Dungeon Masters bring the pain. 100%. 100%. Players also, and the other thing too is, I'm never really too afraid of punishing my players, because in any group I've ever led in, players also bring in the smartass, wisecracking, making fun of everything. So it's like, if they're gonna make fun of everything that I do, that's what they inevitably do. It's just endless puns, endless jokes about everything. One of the things I am always doing when I'm trying to name my NPCs is trying really hard to make sure their names don't sort of lend themselves to puns too easily, because players will always come up with a stupid pun to make fun of the names, and so we need to punish them for that, because I spent all this time and it always immediately devolves into a joke, always immediately, and so, you know, screw them. I'll just make their characters die. Deal. Not quite that harsh, but you know what I mean. we as DMs have to be able to write in our own fun as well. And for me, it's fun to watch them suffer for their ingratitude. Ah, gosh, that's harsh. That's overly harsh. I actually have a wonderful group of players that are very good at balancing taking things seriously as well as having goof off sessions in the middle of a session at any given time. So, all right, we need to determine what is going to go in each room here. So I'm just grabbing a pen and paper so I can write down a few notes while we're going through all of this. But the first thing to do is we want to check and make sure that there aren't any rooms in here that I already know what's going to be where. And because this is meant to be a labyrinth that's supposed to be just a real slog and just a horrible experience for anyone to go through, that's not even just like me as a DM trying to do that. Let's like canon the lore of this area, right? This area is a trap. It's a trap for any travelers who were not invited to the Dwarven City, is what it's supposed to be. So because of that, we are inevitably going to make the final reward and the final reward and final boss in the furthest away room, right? Because they do enter from over here for this section of the dungeon. And so we are naturally going to make it right in here. So room 10, we can go in here. You can see the way I've got this sort of set up. Every room will have a potential danger and a potential reward. I do have rooms that may not have rewards or rooms that will turn out to be safe plenty of times as well. But as a general rule, so we got mini boss, battle, and then this one it's kind of irrelevant because it's the first thing they're going to get, but just to keep things consistent, need key 1. So that first key they found, they will still need to have it. And more than anything, it's just so that way if I feel like I need to, if for some reason, whether it's a roleplay reason or just me deciding to be a dick, if they somehow lose that key, then, now they gotta go back and find that key, which could be a fun thing to do with like the boneless or something like that. You could almost, I haven't really thought too much about it, but you could almost flavor them so that's like their behaviors that they just try to take the key and keep people trapped. But I don't know if that would make much sense for the lore, so I'm not married to that idea. But at any rate, we're setting up the building blocks so we can use that as a tool for challenge and confusion and chaos if we need it. The reward here is going to be key 2, which will then get them access to the next section of the dungeon, as well as some different rooms in section 1 of it. So I know that is going to be the case there. And honestly, I think the rest of it can be distributed kind of randomly. I don't know that there's anything else that I need to be in a specific room, because there are so many different winding paths they could take to end up getting there. I don't want to get too wild and crazy with locking other doors, because it'll either be inconsequential or I'll try so hard to do it that I'll inadvertently block off other parts of the dungeon unintentionally, right? Where it's like, if I were to try and make it so it's like, oh, well, I need them to find another key, so we'll lock up this room, this room, this room, and this room. It's like, well, I've just like locked off, I've hidden more than half the dungeon through, locked doors, so there's only so many places for me to put the key. So if you put the key right there, then it's like, so you can kind of do that, but that just doesn't, that's not really the purpose of this dungeon. This dungeon isn't meant to be a linear path. In fact, it's kind of meant to be the opposite, where there's so many possible paths for people to take that it's like when you see the overhead map, it's not that hard to understand and know where you are in relation to the rest of it, right? So it's one of the pitfalls of having maps that are available. But when you think about lore and sort of immersion, the idea of this dungeon is that every room is supposed to kind of look like another, and with all of these doors, it would be very easy for anyone to get turned around while they're traveling through here. And that's made easier if doors are unlocked, so that anyone who's an intruder trying to find their way through can easily just wander from room to room to room to room to room and get themselves lost and confused and turned around and unsure of what direction is what. So it actually makes more sense for these rooms to largely be unlocked, except for this last one. So I'm going to keep it like that, and we're going to just go ahead and randomly distribute everything else. So using my sort of formula here, we already got the boss battle, so we're really just going to need to figure out where 3 easy battles go. And all I'm doing here on my pad and paper, you can't see it. I don't have notepad cam, tragically, because I'm sure everyone would love to see my chicken scratch rating. But all I'm writing down is I just make a big list of all the elements that I want to put in the floor, so that way I can just randomly roll for them, distribute them, and then scratch them out, so I don't accidentally do too much of one thing or too little of another thing. So I want 3 easy battles, 2 medium battles, and we'll need one other, difficult non-boss battle, and then there will be sort of that boss battle in there to just add that little flavor. I also always like to, within every section of a dungeon, include a puzzle and a trap, just to make sure that everything isn't just a matter of fighting things and moving on. So I'm assuming you mean quiet. I'm doing well. I don't think there's anything I can do about the volume. I've tried everything I can do. I think it's just because I have a crappy mic that's just a headset mic that I'm using, because I don't got money. So unfortunately, you'll probably just have to turn the volume up. I've tried very hard to figure out how to get my volume louder, and I don't think there's really much else I can do about it, unfortunately. So apologies. I wish I could do more. But say la vie. Itty woodity. One day I will hopefully have some extra disposable income and can get a better mic, and I'm hoping that will help out one of these days, but that day is not today. So okay, at any rate, so we've got our battles. We're gonna have a puzzle room, we're gonna have a trap room, and then we're gonna have one room that's a safe room. I always include at least one room that doesn't have some sort of dangerous, horrible thing that's trying to kill them or eat their skin or whatever. Just to give a little bit of respite, and it's like I always try to design or situate that room in such a way that players feel like they can use that room to sort of have a better chance of surviving a long rest too. So it's like if they want to fight their way back to it, they can do that to try and get the long rest. So it's like I'm not opposed to them being able to take long rests in the middle of a dungeon, but they have to earn it. And so by providing them a room specifically for that, that kind of gives them that incentive to do that. As far as rewards go, we've already got, they're going to find that one boss key. It's going to be a little different because usually I would include more locked doors and keys, but because I'm trying to avoid that, we're not going to have any keys really as rewards other than that last one. So we'll probably just replace those with mostly money. But we are going to have our map and our compass and quotes. Let's see, they will be able to get one of their enchantment tokens, which is a homebrew thing that my players and I like to do. There's going to be at least one room with money, one room with some sort of item in it, one room with some potions for them to try and heal themselves with. Let's see here. What am I forgetting? There's one room that's going to be empty because you can't always get a sweet reward. So we'll do that. I think what I want to do is I want to include at least one room that has just like a clue about this being Durgar, although I might sprinkle those in more liberally around elsewhere, and then we'll just give them an extra room with money in it. Players always like finding more money, which cracks me up because players rarely ever use money. Like they'll always use it on like one or two really big things, but that's about it. But then they're like desperate to just get as much money and treasure as possible, and they just walk around with like 8,000 gold in their pockets. Like, well, whatever floats your boat, I guess. So we'll do that. Let's see here. Oh, what do you got? What do you got for us, Gabby? Let's see here. Ask for a DM. Oh, they asked for a DMPC. And so just characters like Lycanthropy gets bad. It's what you're gonna. Oh, okay, all right. One of the few situations in which a DMPC actually works out. I've been in groups that have used DMPCs. The trick with a DMPC is to. I've always found it's not always the worst idea depending on the group composition. And like you're saying, if there's certain members that aren't always as readily available as the rest of the group is, and so it would slow down the campaign and stuff. It's not the worst idea to have a DMPC. Um, there's just a few tricks to sort of make sure. One of them that I always do is if I'm playing a DMPC, I will, for the most part, unless it's like, if it's just thinning out a herd of lackeys in the middle of a big fight or something like that, unless it's that kind of situation, I will, like, happily as DM sort of fudge my rolls to make sure that I don't get the killing blow. I always save that for players so that way they can kind of get the glory. And the other thing is I always make sure my DMPCs have pretty true neutral personalities. Like, they're just there to take orders and help out in a battle. I give them very little roleplay personality when I can. And it's not because I want the DMPC to be boring, and I will try to find uses for them as far as like story plot and stuff goes. They can be a really good vessel for that kind of stuff, but generally speaking, when it's in a group, when it's someone who's traveling with a group, they're there because the group needs a little bit more firepower. So you just have them shut up and hit things. Is pretty much what I always do. That, or if it's going to be like a healer, they hide in the corner and then patch up wounds, and that's pretty much all they do. Right, so it's like I'll do stuff like that. But even then, I avoid it. But it sounds like you guys are figuring out how to do it. So it's always fun to hear about like an actual functional DMPC situation. Okay, so now I've listed out everything that I need to put in here, and so now I'm gonna pull up a dice roller here because my dice are on my bookshelf behind me, and I don't want to stand up and untangle myself from the cords right now to do it. So I'm just going to randomly roll. I like to, unless I have something very specific, like I say, I went through and we know that 10 is going to have certain things in it, right? Other than that, I like to just randomly distribute things. It makes it kind of fun for me as a DM when I randomly assign things to places to try and kind of come up with some reasons why it might be in this room and all that kind of stuff, and it adds a little bit more fun and interest to it, and it also stops me from falling into my own habits of what I would do in if like it would be really easy. We don't notice it in ourselves. We don't notice our own patterns in ourselves, so it's always really easy to accidentally create your own tropes, right? Accidentally have things that are just always this way, and it gives players, it like makes it hard for players to not metagame. And so I find that doing a lot of random distribution of stuff, as long as I've pre-planned out the things that need to happen in certain ways or at certain times, randomly distributing the rest of it helps me avoid getting at least too predictable. Which is good both for immersion and in terms of just making sure that a challenge is, appropriately challenging for players. So we'll go ahead and just randomly distribute everything that goes into these rooms here. So I'm just gonna roll. Start off with a D10 here. All right, so that one is gonna end up having, based on my list, that one's gonna have a. Oh wow, they're gonna be so mad at me. They're gonna open up. Players are going to walk into the second hardest battle, second only to the boss battle. So, hard battle. This one we're also just going to say needs key 1, which they will have just by going through the segment. The first section that leads into it, it's already established there, but just that way in case I'm reading my own notes ahead, because I don't know when I will run this campaign. I have no idea when that will be, but when it does happen, it will likely be a while from now, when I will likely have forgotten most everything. So we need to put in plenty of reminders and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but then the room is also going to have the enchantment token for them. Enchantment token. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let's see here. Created an amazing way to help curb metagaming immensely. I have not heard of campaign coins. Explain it to me. Tell me what's up with those. Tell me what's up with those. Let's see here. My way of curtailing it is just to tell them to stop metagaming. No, that's not true at all. my method of doing it is usually writing things in ways so as to make it so that let's see, this room's going to be a safe room. Is to write with the idea of metagaming in mind, and so to try and make things so that either it doesn't matter or metagaming will just get them get them more confused, and throwing in lots of twists, right? So that way the metagaming doesn't really have an opportunity to gain much traction. Like I say, or so that it doesn't matter, so that way it's like, yeah, you can predict this all you want, you still have to survive it. Let's see, Alright, and then that room is going to have our health potions and stuff in it. There we go. This next room, what are you going to have in you? It's going to be an easy battle. And then it's going to have, let's see here. Easy battle, and then this one is going to have, for the reward, this one's going to have just a big old pile of money in some way, shape, or form. Great. Money, there we go. Alright, let's see here. Let's see, at the end of each session, award best roleplay with roleplay award coin, which they can cash at any time for a reroll where they otherwise would not have. Oh, okay, so kind of an inspiration type of system. That makes sense. That makes sense. Just that type of approach in general is really good. When you reward play, I mean, it's like I almost feel bad for doing that kind of stuff, right? But it's like treating players, like Pavlovian dogs, and just rewarding them for good behavior is a really good way to get them to, sort of quote unquote behave during a session. I do a lot of that kind of stuff. It's not that I feel bad awarding it. It's that I feel bad that I think about my players as dogs that can be trained. But there's, that's just sort of the nature of what it is, right? Like that's when you give out rewards, you're training them to seek out certain behaviors. You're training them to repeat certain behaviors in a predictable fashion. So it's like, let's see. So this is gonna have an item of some sort in it. So it's like teaching your players to do stuff. Isn't treasure rewarding them? 100%. You're 100% right. It's just the mindset of, like I say, it's not the awarding them. It's the thinking about it in terms of training them. Right. And it's like, and the thing is too is a counter argument to that. Treasure isn't in response to a behavior. Treasure is in response to succeeding at the goal. So so let's see here. Let's see. I gotta re-roll that one. Okay. So this room's gonna have an easy battle in it. Easy battle. Boo. But rather reprimand them for metagaming, for not gaming and focus on more. I think you're misinterpreting me. I'm not saying that I feel bad giving my players good stuff. I'm saying I feel bad about viewing my players as dogs. I'm just joking around here. Let's see here. And then the reward is, so this is going to be an empty room without a reward in it. This one time here. I don't feel bad about giving them rewards. I feel bad about when the motivation for giving them a reward is to subtly use psychology to trick them into doing what I want them to do. That's what the feel bad is, but that's like what the job of a DM is. So, it's mostly just me joking around. Let's see here. If you have enough players, vote for the role player MVP too. Yeah, you could leave it up to a democracy. That's a good way to do it too. That's a good way to build sort of solidarity and get the whole group to sort of be on board with building the type of campaign that they all want to have collectively. That's a really good way to do it. Let's see. So this room is going to have a trap in it. Cap at 2 coins per session. Yeah. I think preventing them from hoarding stuff is a good idea as well. In general, there's some things that I'm willing to let them hoard. Like I say, I'm willing to let them hoard gold within the game because they'll almost never spend it as quick as they earn it. So if it makes them feel good to get a whole a whole mess of gold that they won't sell, then by all means, friends, by all means. Let's see here. Alright, so this one, almost done with this little bit of minutia. Oh, this one's going to be an easy battle. It's a little tedious to set this stuff up, but I find that getting it all done right here, right now, makes it a lot easier, because then you can kind of think about what is going to be in each room, and it sort of gives you a better idea to, you know, you can look ahead at other rooms and kind of have one room build into another one and all that kind of stuff here. Let's see here. And then this room, the reward is going to be, oh yeah, we'll give them some sort of clue. Let's see here. Clue that Durgar are here. Let's do that there. Let's see here. That's that one right there. And then we get here. Linked campaign coins for your reference. You know what you should do with it? I've got a Discord. You should join up with that and link stuff in there, so that way I can like actually reference it later, because it's like I'd be very interested to check out more of it, but like if it's just put in the chat, it just goes away, because I won't do it right now, because I'm just working on, you know, the stuff that I'm streaming as it is. But yeah, if you want to put it in the Discord, then it's something that I can check out later that way. You're more than welcome to do that. Let's see here. This room's gonna have puzzle in it. Let's see here. Puzzle there. And then for a reward, this room will have the map. Oh, they're gonna be so mad they won't find the map until way deep into the dungeon. Alright, and then this map by default, because there's only one option left for everything, this one is going to have a medium battle, and then the compass is the last thing for them to find there. So there we go. Okay, everything is sort of determined there. Got that all figured out. That little bit of tedium taken care of there. Let's see here. Seeing a better solution to curb metagaming. It's not perfect. Yeah, I think curbing metagaming also relies a lot upon sort of the group and how the group handles things. Like with my group that I'm with right now, I actually don't need to do a whole lot to curb metagaming. They're really good at policing themselves for that, because they don't like the storytelling aspect of it, and so for them it's more fun to not have their characters know more than they should. So I've been really lucky in that front. But that said, again, I'm really lucky in that front. There are some groups that will have sort of the power gamers that really utilize that metagaming aspect to try and just sort of win at all costs. And like, I think the part for me too is, as the DM, I kind of, as long as it's not too bad and just as long as it's not destroying the fun for everyone else, a lot of times I'm willing to say like, hey, you know, whatever floats your boat, if that's what you want to do, you can play the game like that. I'll just up the difficulty on the challenges if you're gonna do stuff like that. But yeah, I know some groups, you know, there's problems with that, and so you got to find ways to curtail it. Let's see here. Jenny, would you like it? And there should be a like writing homebrew sharing. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I'm like one of the worst mods of a Discord server in the world. I don't even know how it's organized. If you search around in there, there's one that's like set up for sharing homebrew writing and stuff like that. That'd be a really good place to put it. Let's see here. Okay, so we figured out what's gonna go in each room here. Let me see here. Hold on. Okay. So now we gotta describe everything here. So first off, we've got a hard battle here. And so that's gonna break down to somewhere around 900 XP. Might end up being a little different than that. But let's see here. Oh, let's see here. So we gotta find a way to distribute and use up 900 experience points worth of battle without using our boss. Slithering Tracker is saved for last. So we could throw in throw in just a whole bunch. We could do, what is that? We could do 4 of the boneless and then like maybe a couple oozes. Actually, wait, hold on. If we do 3, that's 600. And then, no, I like the idea of doing 4 oozes and then, or no, four boneless and then 2 of the oozes. I kind of like that battle makeup there. That's it. 4 boneless. Sounds like I'm ordering wings here. I'd like 4 boneless, please. And then, but that metaphor falls, or that similarity falls apart when we start talking about oozes. I don't know that I ever would willfully order something called ooze when ordering food. Choose threat, gray ooze. There it is. All right, and then just for my own benefit, in case something ever happens where, no, that's 200 XP. In case it ever happens where one or more monsters run away or something like that, I always put the individual XP so I know it's quicker and easier for me to give them the XP that they need for it. So yeah, let's do that. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna add just again, or we'll reference it. It's not really necessary to describe it this many times, but I always err on the side of giving myself too many notes and reminders within it, so that way if I accidentally overlook one of the reminders, I see the next one. And it just makes it a lot easier to make sure I don't forget something important here. So we're just going to reiterate again. There's need key 1 from section 1 to access this portion of the dungeon. And I think that's the only thing that they need that we really need to worry about there. Because if they want to sneak and stealth their way through here, we can just sort of have it be there, but there's not anything in particular because they'll go in and they'll see the piles of leather. So it's not like I'll always let them stealth, and I'll pretty much always just like set it to whatever the medium, and I know in my head for this dungeon that's going to be 12. So if they want to do that, that's all perfectly fine. But there's not much for them to perceive, at least when they first sort of peek through a room that's like hidden. It's not like the shadows where there's something hidden in plain sight per se. There's going to be the leathery creatures, but we can describe those and then give them like a perception check to see if they notice anything weird about those, like it, you know, being a pile of humanoid skin. So we'll go ahead and add some description before we worry about that. Okay, so we got black text there. Let's see. As you push open the door to this room, you see that it is similar to all the others down here. A statue stands. There it is, stands in the center of the room as the sounds of dripping water echo softly off the walls. Just add a bit more description here. Cold stone doors stand on the, it doesn't really make sense to say stand on, but it doesn't matter. Also stand on the east, south, and west walls of this room. I want to remember my Oxford comma there. Big fan of the Oxford comma personally. My personal tastes. You can take whatever stance you prefer on the Oxford comma. Personally, I feel like it never hurts to put it in there. All right. West walls of this room. Let's see here. In the corner there is something piled up that looks perhaps like a pile of abandoned leather garments. we'll do that. And then is where we'll add, if players try to identify before triggering battle, we'll say perception. See, we'll set that to 14. I want that to be kind of difficult for them to understand what it is. Actually, here's what we'll do. Perception DC 11. Perception, I guess at that point in time it'd be more investigation, because they're actively looking for answers about something. Let's see here. Players try to identify before triggering battle. Investigation DC 11 to see that it looks like humanoid skin. DC 14 to notice that it is in any way animated. And so because I'm putting that behind a skill check wall, I think what I need to do is, if players fail to identify that it, dang it, there it is. Players fail to identify that the skin is animated, the skin will stealth, opposing their, we'll say perception at that point, opposing their perception to try and get a sneak attack round. There we go. Okay, kind of a complicated bit of notes there, but we wanna, like I say, always best to err on the side of too many notes rather than not enough, because that way, like I say, this isn't, I'm not writing something that I'm actively running, because after all the talk of metagaming, one thing I would not want, and my players would be good about it, I trust them, but some of my players will occasionally pop in and watch my streams, and the last thing I want to do is give away all the secrets, so that way, like, in two or three sessions, when suddenly they come upon something like, oh, I know exactly what's going on here because they watched the stream. I don't want to do that. So this campaign is one that I will not be running anytime soon, and so the more notes I have, the easier it will be for me to remember what the heck I was getting at when I'm reading my own crap. Okay, so enchantment token here. So again, this is sort of a homebrew system that I use with my players, wherein they can, rather than buying or finding magic items, I give them the opportunity to try and imbue the items that they have with bits of magic that they can find in the form of these tokens. And I find that my players really like that because it makes it easier for them to sort of just thematically keep whatever their character's special weapons is. Like one of my players, his character's special thing was like nunchucks, right? So we kind of did some homebrew basic nunchucks. That was pretty easy to figure out. But rather than him just sort of like abandoning those immediately because that's like what his character wanted to use, he wanted his character to be using those, rather than just abandoning it because like, oh, well, the nunchucks are what he uses, but this staff is just, it's a +1, so it does better. Instead of that, it gives them the opportunity to sort of create their own cool items that will, by the end of the campaign, be the sort of legendary items that then might be found later on in a different campaign or something, right? So it's a system that we kind of come up with there. My players enjoy it. Not always the most balanced system, but ultimately it's a game. It's a game, and they really like it. So they've been having a lot of fun with it, and so I just give them all kinds of potential stuff to find here. So what we're gonna do for it, we'll just add a little description. As the dust settles and the piles of skin fall shredded and lifeless to the ground, you notice what appears to be a small coin sitting at the foot of the statue is what we'll put it right there. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out what spell, because I always have the tokens be imbued with an actual spell that exists in there, and so then we can just kind of find a creative way to say, okay, what would that spell look like if it was imbued upon an item? Like if you put, some sort of poison type of spell on a sword, how would that look? Would it make the blade just like always poisonous, or how would that do it? And it sort of kind of makes it a fun collaborative group project to figure out what kind of enchantment we're talking about here. And again, it makes it fun, so that you have just these really unique items that wouldn't ever be replicated in any game, and so every player can kind of feel fun and special about having their own unique stuff if that's what they want to do. So let's see, this is a level 4 dungeon, so we're going to stick with level 1 spells here. I don't want to give them, I'm going to give them like the damn, wish spell, so they can have like Sword of Infinite Wishing, and like every time they hit something they can just wish that it was dead or whatever. It'd be a little over the top. Even if they were at level 20, I wouldn't give them that kind of crap, but you know what I mean. So I want to come up with first level spells. Let's filter the spells here. And so I always try to keep it kind of thematic. So it's like in this type of situation, we're talking about like a really horror-oriented thing. So I feel like the enchantment should be something that's like really dark and gross and twisted, and we can actually reference what did we do for the first one? Because I put one in every floor for them to possibly find, or every set of stuff here. So we already did detect good and evil, which is sensible in here, because like the idea behind that one would be, if they had something like that, detect good and evil could help them tell the difference between dwarf presence and Duergar presence and stuff like that, right? And so it's unlikely that they would go through the enchantment process while they're right there, but it's sort of a thematic thing, something that fits. And so it's like I guess I think about it as a way for them to take a bit of the experience of that dungeon with them and turn it into a tool for them. So something like this dungeon that has all kinds of like monstrosities, undead, things like that, I want to find something that would let them sort of just have that thematic essence that they could then bring with them and use throughout the rest of the game. So it's a really broad description of what I'm looking for. It's like, and really what it comes down to is I'm looking for that certain je ne sais quoi that I can't describe, and only I'll know it when I see it. Kind of like, me knowing that I want the boneless as opposed to the zombies present in this dungeon, right? There's not really a clear way to describe it. It's just, you feel it. You feel it. You feel that theme that you're going for, that feeling, that sense of, atmosphere that you're going for. And so immediately I'm thinking cause fear might be a good one, right? Because that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this dungeon. I'm trying to just cause fear for them. So that could be a decent one. What other options do we have here? We'll go back to that one. Detect Good and Evil, I already did that one. Detect Poison, Disguise Self. Dissonant Whispers would be a really good one, right? In a dungeon like this, where there's all kinds of weird echoes, and there's like shadows popping off the wall and skin coming to life, just like Dissonant Whispers. The concept of just like subtle sounds that would drive someone slowly insane. Like that really fits. That's on brand right there. So that's a good one as well. I almost want to save that one for later, because that one seems even more twisted, right, than Cause Fear. We can see what other things are here. What else do we got here at level 1? Guiding Bolt, Hail Thorns, Hellish Rebuke is kind of almost the opposite, isn't it? Hideous Laughter, see, there you go. Hideous Laughter would be a good one. Inflict Wounds. Inflict Wounds is a little bit more blatant. I like Jim's Magic Missile. This isn't your grandma's Magic Missile. This is Jim's Magic Missile, okay? Let's see, and then our last page is going to have a whole lot here. Sanctuary is like, again, the opposite almost. Speak with Animals. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. It's the original flavor there. Unseen Servant would be kind of a fun one. That's like almost invoking a shadow to be your assistant, right? It's like taking the shadow with you. Like the Glove of that would be such a fun item. The Glove of Unseen Servant. All you do is you snap your fingers like pretentiously, and then your servant shows up. But they're unseen, as servants should be. And just like the audacity involved in creating that item. Alright, no, I think I want to go back to just that idea of cause fear. I really like that one. Awaken the sense of mortality in one creature you can see within range. Construct or an undead is immune to the effect. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become frightened of you till the spell ends. Frightened target can repeat the saving throw. And at higher levels, target one additional creature. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I think Cause Fear works out well for here. I think that really Cause Fear. And I actually have, you can see all my tabs over here. In the Magic tab, I will a lot of times put in more specific notes about how I want an enchantment to sort of look, or at least if there are limitations that I want to put in there. So I will probably at some point in time go back and make sure, if I haven't already, do that for Cause Fear. But I don't think I want to do that right now. I think I want to stay focused on what's going on here, because I feel like we're getting some good momentum, getting some rooms going, and starting to understand, sort of, figure out exactly what the feel of this particular section of this dungeon is going to be. So let's go ahead and decorate this room now. Go ahead and go to objects. So each room, one of the things that I'm doing, and this is a thematic thing, excuse me, one of the things that I'm doing in this room is, or in this dungeon, is that each room has its own it has its own unique statue, right? And then so the idea is that, at least if you were there in person, the players are unlikely to care or notice from this top-down viewpoint, so it's not really there, but I'll know, and that matters to me. But I figure, like, what they would do is, to someone who's being particularly attentive, they might be able to navigate their way in and out of the dungeon by paying attention to what statues are present, right? So they can look for familiar statues and stuff like that and try and remember. So I like to put that in there, even though they'll probably ignore it and not pay attention to it. But let's see here. If your questions are, oh no, you're totally fine. How long have I been playing, and how long have I been dungeon mastering? I've been playing D&D. I've been playing tabletop RPGs for, I guess it would be a little over a decade at this point in time. First game I played ever, though, wasn't D&D. It was in college, and I was with a group of playing Call of Cthulhu. So that was my first introduction to tabletops. Dungeons & Dragons I picked up with a group a couple years later. So D&D, explicitly a little less than 10 years, probably closer to 6 or 7. And then playing tabletops in general, roughly a decade. So for how long have I been DMing? Gosh, wasn't long after the first time playing D&D that I took up the mantle as dungeon master for a group of friends, because first time playing D&D itself was with a group that was established. It was a group that my sister was part of, and they invited me to come play with them. And then it was a couple years later, it's like a year or two later, that I started getting into it, because I've been a world builder. I've done world building just as a creative writing hobby for even longer than all of that. And so I started getting interested in trying to use that hobby as a way to sort of create. I got interested in using that hobby as a way to sort of create D&D worlds, which is basically just the way I did it. Was I kept doing my world building and then slapping stat blocks onto it, is sort of what I wanted to do. And so it was very clumsy at first, but I started kind of creating these worlds. And then it was in grad school. I had a group of friends, and I mentioned that I played D&D, and I had some friends in grad school that were like, oh, I've always wanted to try and play. And so I offered to be a DM. I wasn't really ready, and I kind of knew I wasn't, because I was still pretty inexperienced, but I was like, it would be really fun to play D&D with these guys, and they have even less experience than me, so it's not like they'll notice. And that was kind of true. And so that's how I did it. So I've been a DM. I've been DMing games for, gosh, how many years would that make it? That would have been like 2014, 2015? Sometime around then. So yeah, we're looking at like 6 or 7 years that I've been a DM for various groups. Sometimes running modules, sometimes doing pure homebrew, all that kind of stuff. So I asked a dungeon. So yeah, like I say, it was, I don't know if I would say proactive and ambitious, but more so willing for the sake of getting more D&D in my life and hanging out with friends and doing fun stuff with them. is what I would say about it. Like I say, world building is something that I've done for a long, long time. Just sort of creatively coming up with atmospheres. Because my first time ever getting really interested in world building was as a kid watching my sister play the Myst games, like Myst and Riven and all those. I was fascinated with the concept of a book containing a world, right? Not a book containing a story, but a book containing a world. I thought that was such a cool idea. And I was like, that would be so fun to just sort of describe a world. So you could like look through the book and find yourself at a different place in the world, right? That just describes this like environmental setting. So it's like it just sort of like a book form of like a screensaver or something was almost what I really liked. I really liked that idea. So I kind of got involved in that, and then it sort of turned into being like, okay, well, I can describe the scene, but then how did it get to be that way? Not necessarily what's happening now, but what happened in the past to make the world. Like, what happened to turn this beautiful castle into castle ruins? You know, what happened that this really inhospitable planet, you know, became populated? All that kind of stuff. And so I got interested in that kind of stuff. And from there, I feel like it was a pretty natural jump to then switch over and start doing a lot of DMing type stuff. So yeah, it was it's kind of been a long winding journey for me getting into a lot of that stuff, but that's kind of the pathway, the route that I took in getting to where I am nowadays. So like, I don't know, I still consider myself to be pretty amateur dungeon master, but pretty much every group that I end up leading, they end up being really pleased with the way I do things, and they have a lot of fun with it. So I'm always just kind of taking the attitude of like, all right, if it works for you, then I'll keep doing it. And that's kind of how it is. So like my current group now is a group where it's a group that I'm leading that I was introduced to the players. They're all friends of a friend of mine. It was one of my friends that I was a DM for in grad school, and then he knew these people that wanted to be part of a campaign, and so he sort of introduced me to them. And then they asked me to be a DM, and I was like, sure, why not? I'll be a DM for you guys. And here we are. It's been, I don't know about to the day, but to the month, it's been exactly a year. We started playing in November of 2020, and it was like really awesome that we got it together, because like all of us at that time, like that was the thick of all of the COVID quarantines and everything where we live, and so we all were working from home. So we all like, we would plan a session, to be able to play. We would plan a session, and we would basically be like, okay, we know we're going to play on this date, so like 2 weeks ahead of time, let's all of us, like, we're all working from home anyway, but let's all of us, like, stay home. We'll like go out 2 weeks ahead of time and get enough groceries that we can just stay home and not go out for a couple weeks, so that way we can all meet in so-and-so's house, right, and be able to safely meet and play games. And so we did that, and it was like really awesome for me as a DM to find a group that was like that. Everyone was that on board with all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was how the group that I currently lead started, and it was and here we are still playing the same campaign, the same mission, and they're having fun with it. And one of them actually himself has gotten really into world building and wanting to be a DM. And he's the one who most frequently will pop into the streams and watch me, because he likes to see what the process is for sort of building a world and everything like that. And it was really funny too, because like, a lot of players, him included, will be sort of nervous. They'll be like, oh, I don't want to step on your toes if you're the DM, but I'm kind of interested in that. And my attitude is like, for the love of God, please be the DM. I would love to be a player for a change. Because once you get pegged as the DM, right, like that's just, like the joke, it's really only, it's not really even a joke, forever DM. Like that's what ends up happening, is you just end up kind of doing that, because most commonly what will happen is you'll get a group of people that are like, we want to play, but we don't know anything about it. But we know you, and we know that you know how to play D&D. So will you be a DM for us? And as a DM, you do it because you love it. So you're like, yes, I'll DM for you guys. But then it's like, for me, years will pass, and I'm currently a player in a Pathfinder game, but I haven't been a player in a D&D game, like an actual D&D rule set. I haven't been a player. I've been a world builder and a DM in the 5e setting for pretty much those like 6 years straight since the first time, because I was always like chaining one group after another, one campaign after another. I've been a DM for 5e for all those years. I have been a player like for one group in that time. I have been a player once, right? And not including the occasional someone's like, oh, I came up with a little one shot that I want to run. Like I've done a couple of those, but I haven't been a 5e player in years. So it's like he's getting into it. I'm like, yes, please, for the love of God, write something. And once we finish up the campaign, I will be a long-term player for a change. And I would absolutely just poop myself at out of excitement of the opportunity to do that. So at any rate, here's our first room. I think that's all we really need. Again, these rooms are just really meant to be really empty, like strangely empty, repetitive, monotonous rooms. I want them to be like that. I don't want there to be all kinds of weird, interesting stuff. It's like there's a statue for navigation, and then that's it. You want to go back to being a player, or not metagame when you foresee everything about 95%. Actually, yeah, right. That's always one of the tough parts, and that's why I like to try and like I play characters that are very like role play heavy. Is like, because for me that's the best way to mitigate it, because it's a player that is like, I try to make a character that's very dependent. Like their thing is that they just tend to be roleplay focused and play off of the other player characters, right? So that way I'm not sitting there being a stat heavy character, a character that does everything based on attack rolls and all that kind of stuff, or saves or anything like that. I do a character that is pretty much like, when there's a fight, I just like, yep, I do these attacks and that's it. And then everything else is more so about role playing and following instructions. And that tends to be a pretty good way to mitigate that. But yeah, that's always the challenge. But the flip side of it is after so long of being a DM and like recognizing what ways of metagaming are acceptable, what ways of metagaming are disruptive, it makes it easier for me to recognize situations where I should be like, oh, I suspect this is going to happen, but I should shut my mouth and just let the other DM take charge here, right? Like if there's a certain enemy that comes in, or there's clues about an enemy, and I suddenly am like, oh, that's a werewolf. Like I can tell very clearly the clues are that way. I'll have my character just not really say anything until someone else brings it up, right? Because then it's like, oh, well, I really figured this out, but that's probably a lot of my DM experience sort of giving me a leg up on figuring that one out. So better for me to just sort of keep my trap shut, and we'll and then we'll see how everything else plays out. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, because a flip side of the argument could be, if you make your character one that's very dependent on the stats and everything like that, that's a good way, because even if I figure something out, if I make sure I'm always rolling for everything, then it's the dice that decide what stuff I express my character as knowing. So there's all kinds of different ways to go about avoiding that metagaming, and I think it just kind of comes down to what it is that will click for you as the player to recognize, oh, I might know that, but my character shouldn't know that, so I should probably not say anything or not do this thing unless, the situation really calls for it. Things like that. But it's kind of a perpetual challenge, and I don't think it's anything that anyone can perfectly avoid, just because the nature of it is you're playing a game. I mean, even playing a video game, you meta-knowledge crap all the time, right? Like, you start to recognize the patterns and stuff that exist in a video game. You start to recognize in a game, like, oh, they use yellow landmarks and like bright yellow things to denote that you can climb a wall in this place, right? Like yellow ladders signify, oh, you can climb this, right? A yellow ledge means, oh, my character can jump and grab this. So then you're going through a world and suddenly you notice a little bit of yellow outside, just randomly placed around. That's metagaming, right? That's you recognizing like, oh, there's something yellow there. That probably means there's something for me to do over there. And then you go check it out, right? And you might accidentally, find some place that you'll be back to later on in the story, or you might find some like super awesome special hidden item, right? And so it's like metagaming is just part of gaming. There's not necessarily a way to avoid it. The hard part about it is when it's a multiplayer game like a tabletop RPG, metagaming it runs the risk of turning into the board game equivalent of screen hacking when you're playing Halo, right? So like that's really what you're trying to avoid. So the trick is kind of to figure out what are appropriate versions of metagaming and what are inappropriate ones, and sort of just like curtail your actions and your decisions based on sort of that understanding. And the best way to do that is really to just kind of keep playing and practicing, because you eventually kind of start to learn that sort of you start to sort of figure out and key into like, oh, this is an okay time, or oh, this isn't an okay time. I don't know. That's a really long-winded explanation. It doesn't really amount to a whole lot other than it's hard and you have to practice. So I don't know. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, I guess. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's all part of the gaming. It's all part of the game, and it's part of what makes it really fun, right? Trying to figure that stuff out, because there are other times when there'll be times when like you as a player can't figure something out, but your DM will let you roll dice, and because you rolled really well on your check, they'll be like, okay, your character recognizes this, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. So it's like, it happens in reverse too, and it's all part of what makes it fun, right? Because every game's going to be a little different. Every situation's going to be a little different. So it keeps it fresh and fun. So it's part of the reason too why, as a DM, I will like have a dungeon that has monsters that are of the same theme. And a lot of times, even so, like, we got our gray oozes here, the reduced threat gray ooze. Once we get up deeper into the dungeon, where enemies have to keep getting harder and harder, I'm gonna stick with the oozes, but they're gonna be slightly different versions, right? And so it's like I do that as a way to make it so that when players are kind of metagaming and start to just sort of, in spite of themselves, learn what the best ways to fight oozes are and stuff like that, that's okay, because they're learning the same things that their characters would be learning. So that metagaming in that situation is totally appropriate, because the metagaming is really just making it more innate for them to do what their characters would do, right? It makes sense. So it's like, by trying to design things that way, in a way, what I'm trying to do is almost give them permission, like make it okay for them to metagame in those scenarios, because it'll just make things smoother, and it will reward both their player and their character for paying attention to the fact, like, oh, we're fighting these big jelly things all the time. Well, we've learned that this way works and this way does not. And then when it's a little different, they're like, oh, okay, well, let's try these options. And if they do or don't work, they can be like, okay, that didn't work. So we take what we know and what we've just learned and we modify, right? So it just kind of blends the meta-knowledge with the non-meta-knowledge of the game, and it makes it so that players don't have to worry about it so much. So it's one of the things that I try really hard to do with my dungeons is make it so that the things that the players learn and can kind of metagame through are also things that their characters would learn and be able to figure out. So, I don't know. Again, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I said that, and then I kept talking random crap out my beehole, but, Alright, so this room is going to be safe. Let's see here. And so I always try to make it obvious, too. Like, I try to let there be one room where players can be like, oh, we don't need to be suspicious here. This is totally fine. So we'll say, as you enter this room, excuse me, as you enter this room, a sense of, we'll say a strange sense of calm washes over you. There is no visual difference between this room and the rest. As I'm writing this, I'm realizing my players are 100% going to be so suspicious of this. You can actively tell them. You could actively tell them, You walk into the safest room in the world. It is well fortified, and there are barriers everywhere. They'll walk in and they'll be like, something's up with this room. There's something going on here. Right? Like, players are the worst at accepting a gift. It's really funny. It's really funny. Yeah, we'll say there's no visual difference between this room and the rest other than the statue, which in this room appears to have an almost angelic glow about it. The statue is holding a tray upon which sit 5 different bottles of potion. And then, yeah, I mean, that's like it. And so then we'll just say potions. Alright, let's see here. So, I'm not even going to, like, do the description. We already did the description. So, always 3 healing potions. I always give them 3 healing, and then I give them 2 other, like, I try to give them 2 potions that will cure any sort of particular illnesses or problems they're likely to be struggling with. And so with with them facing the oozes, it's always good to check these guys out. Alright, so they can take acid damage, but that's not necessarily going to be causing any long-term things. So at this stage, they don't need much else besides healing potions. What did I do in the last other room? Because it's kind of the same thing. Potion of comprehension, potion of watchful rest. Yeah, that's what we did. I think I'm going to do the same thing, honestly. Give them a few more tools to be able to understand. Like, the potion of comprehension is good because it'll help them understand the clues written in Undercommon that are left behind by the Duragar and all that kind of stuff. And then the watchful rest will just make it easier for them to feel like they can get a secure, safe, guaranteed long rest. Because that's one thing I try to do. I recognize that a lot of my rooms or a lot of my dungeons end up feeling kind of oppressive because, you know, this dungeon has 4 sets of 10 rooms, so that's up to 40 rooms of travel of stuff that they can potentially go through. My players in a single 2-hour session, because we play on weeknights nowadays, we play online on weeknights. In a 2-hour session, I can reasonably suspect that they will get through 3 to 6 rooms per 2-hour session. So it's not like it's going to take forever for them to get through this, but that's a lot of stuff for their players to go through. So I always like to try and make sure that there's plenty of opportunities for a little bit of a respite, at least from a character viewpoint, because these do tend to be. I am a big fan of the like mega dungeon approach to stuff personally. So I try to make sure that there's a bit of respite in the process of getting through that mega dungeon. Good morning to you too, as well, Riley Ghost. Although I will say, clearly time zones are messing us up here because it's not the morning around here anymore. We are well into the past midday where I am, but I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you. Let's see here. Okay, so let's decorate this room here. First, let's throw down our objects as always. We need a statue. Do any of these statues have a tray? It's not really. It's kind of neither here nor there. If they don't actually have a tray, that's fine. Okay, what ones have I used? Okay. So let's go back over here. I want to use then, where did it go? I was going to use this one because it's like holding something out. Or we could do, have I used that one? That one looks like it could have, that one looks like it's kind of like angel wings or something. If I use that one. I've already used that one. Alright, we'll use, where'd it go? This one, because it looks like it could, in theory, be holding out a tray. I don't know. It's whatever. Just put it in the middle of the room. Right there. Perfect. Time zones, yeah. Yeah, time zones are, they definitely make things kind of weird, especially like that's kind of one of the interesting things that I feel like is a much more present concern in our lives than it was really in any timer generation beforehand. Like with as global as the internet is nowadays, it makes it really easy to interact with people in literally any time zone out there. It's kind of a unique problem. Uh, makes things interesting. All right, let's see. We got to get our torches here, as always. 2 torches around every door, because that's just what you do. That's what you do when you're making a dungeon, is you make sure every door has a torch on either side of it. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows the rules. Everyone knows that. All right. Throw down some light in all of these. There, and there. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, let's see, what time is it? 1:20. Okay, we got about 10 minutes before writing stream is going to be done today. So let's try and cram in one more room. I think we can fit one more room in here. So this one's going to have an easy battle. Bullet point this. Easy battle here. Easy battles have what, 300 experience in this segment of the dungeon? Yeah, 300 experience points. Let's just put 3 shadows in here. I like that idea. 100 XP. Let's see here. Okay, so we need to put some DM notes here. When players enter, check passive perceptions any higher than than DC 14 will notice the extra shadows on any given wall. If not, then the shadows will get a surprise round. Boom. A surprise. There we go. Surprise round. Boom. There we go. I love the shadows for that. I love the shadows for that. It's a really good way to mess with your players. Alright, let's see. I always sound so adversarial about it, right? Oh, God, I love screwing with my players. I love any way that messes with my players. It's not so much that. It's just like, I like mixing it up, right? You like to mix things up so that it's not always just like, here, enemy, you kill, get gold, moving on, right? You like to try and mix things up a little bit. So any way that I can do that to mess with players, I always like. Why am I being really bad at spelling the word surprise here? Okay. Alright, let's see here. Entering this room, you feel a strong sense of not being alone. Of course, it could just be the statue that stands in the center of the room and looms over everything. Honestly, we can just kind of, there we go. Okay, we can just kind of leave it as simple as that. Honestly, don't really even need a whole lot more. So I think that's perfectly fine there. And then we'll do shadows. Those are 100 XP a pop. And then money. Let's see here. So money. It's here, lying in the corner of the room is a small pile of white dust. It appears to be the remnants of a skeleton that has long since disintegrated. Let's try that again. Disintegrated. Okay, I'm just gonna not sit here and try forever. Just let autocorrect handle it for me. Let's see here. Hey, Tony, how's it going? You are exactly in time for the last 8 minutes of the writing stream. We were talking about you guys earlier. One of my players just came in. Was talking about you guys and how big of a butthole you all are. No, I'm just kidding. He's talking about how awesome you guys are as players, and how I don't really need to worry about you guys metagaming too much, and it was great. Let's see here. Appears remnants of a skeleton that's long since disintegrated. after centuries down in these tunnels by the remains. Wowie. There it is. By the remains is a tattered and falling apart satchel filled with um, a bit of gold. Boom, there we go. All right, and then we just gotta come up with what's in it. Grease fires for life. Yeah, yeah. That's he's referencing. My players have become quite adept at using using grease to start fires in areas to do crowd control. It's actually really impressive how well they do it. I always enjoy it. Takes some on the spot homebrew consideration to figure out exactly how it would work, but gosh, I like to reward that creativity for sure. All right, let's see here. We're gonna go quickly here. This is just whenever I need to do some sort of treasure hoard or whatever. I like to use this tool. It's just the loot generator. Just takes stuff from the GM, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it just sort of randomly rolls on the tables for you, so that you don't have to do it. And that's always my favorite. So let's see here. So 180 gold pieces in gold. Gold pieces in gold. That was an intelligent sentence that I just said. 180 GP. 3. I saw it had 3 healing potions. Why not? Why not give them the opportunity to find those things? And then the only other thing, and then the other thing it had on here is it had a lot of art. So we'll just copy and paste. Dang it, there we go. Do that there. Delete some of these things here. Yeah, I know what it was from. I don't need you to remind me. Thank you. And then I just want to link. Remove link. Boom. Boom. Move link. Boom. 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 Then boom. 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 There we go. There we go. Just do it like that. I just don't want it to be a link that leads to something erroneous. It'll just confuse me later when I go back to it. I appreciate that. I've been avoiding saying your screen name because I know I'm going to say it weird and wrong. Namkanator? Namkanator. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's nice to hear. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. I appreciate you. Okay, let's see here. Small. They're set in a painted wooded frame. Boom. There we go. Okay, so that's what's going in there. Let's go ahead and decorate this room up here. We need to get to our object tool. Need to find a different statue. What's a statue? I don't think we've used this statue yet. I don't know what this is a statue of, but I'm going to put it in there. And there we go. Beautiful. And then let's get our customary torches. Boom. Can't have a dungeon without torches. Without wall sconces. Boom. Those ones are kind of close to the door. Whatever. It's pretty irrelevant, all things considered. Alright, there we go. Let's see here. Yeah, this is the player that's one day going to be my salvation and allow me to be a player instead of a forever DM. This is the guy. This is the hero. All right, there we go. There's a room there. There we go. Got 3 rooms done anyway. Doing that on top of having organized all of our baseline background stuff here. I think that's pretty good progress. Exactly. How it's with the amount of times you guys miss while throwing your own torches that you keep in your packs. Yeah, you definitely need the torches and wall sconces available to you so you can try a couple times. But okay, so with that, I think that is an excellent place to call it a writing stream here. So I'm gonna save my work here, so that way it's just all this the pure. Especially you have a magical ability to come in exactly when we're finishing up. Um, uh, but yeah, so let's see here. Let's call it a writing session there. What's gonna happen, as always, is I'm going to take a bit of a break, rest my voice just a little bit, and then I'm gonna come back and do my video game streaming. We are currently watching me struggle and fail my way through Neverwinter Nights. So if you like the if you like the D&D types of content. Oh, hey, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Glad you enjoy the content here. But yeah, I'm gonna take a break. We'll come back, do some Neverwinter Nights, play through that. It's some real good old school RuneScape looking fun. So we'll do that for a little bit after the break. So if you wanna hang out and watch me struggle at that, you can. If you're really just here for the D&D content, I totally understand. I will be back. As of right now, I should be back tomorrow. I don't presently have anything in the schedule that will get in the way of me doing my stream, so I'll be back at the same time to do some writing tomorrow, as well as presently. Well, I guess I should say possibly Thursday. I don't know. Thursday may or may not be available. I believe Friday I will be around though. Yeah. So this week at the very least there will be other times I'll be writing this week if that is what you're interested in. So check back for those. If you want a bit more up-to-date information on when I will and won't be streaming, you can join. I've got my Discord channel. And sign up for that. I do try to do announcements. There's not always a whole lot of advance notice if I can't stream. It tends to be more so like, oh yeah, if you're looking for me streaming right now, I'm not available. But I try to keep that updated so you can join that. And if you're interested in watching any of my past stuff, I do have my YouTube channel. I put all the VODs up there. There's VODs, so it's kind of chaotic and messy there, but they are there. They are there, so you can check those out as well. And I think that's all I got. I think that's all I've got as far as the self-plugs, the narcissistic self-plugs and advertisements. Yeah, that's what I got. So, sweet. Thank you, everyone who stopped by. Appreciate you guys. Like I say, if you want to hang out a bit longer, you can check back in like 15-20 minutes. I'll be back to video game. Other than that, take care of yourselves, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. So, yeah, we'll call it a stream there. Bye, everyone.